Hello and welcome to the FI for Kids podcast, the podcast about starting and guiding your kids on the path to financial independence. Our guest today is Bill Tilman. Bill's a real estate agent, owns his own brokerage, 4.5 Real Estate, and he's also a real estate investor. So thanks for coming on with us today, Bill.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Let's start with you just telling us a little bit about your background with real estate. Tell us when and how you first became interested in real estate.
Yeah, I would probably say right around high school. I graduated high school in 2006. And so we kind of had a real estate boom, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. So there was a lot of action and excitement around real estate here where I live, right? So, and I was actually interested in flipping homes. And so while I was still in high school, I had a decent job. I actually had a salary, which nobody else in high school had a salary at the time.
Like an
Uh,
actual salary, not an hourly wage, but a
yes,
salary.
yeah, it was an actual
Wow.
salary. Yeah, it wasn't a lot, but it was a salary. So I was looking at either buying a house or I really wanted to be like a house flipper. And I think there was a show on TV back then, and now there's like Flip or Flop, and Joanna Gaines, and all that. I can't remember what it was called, but like Flip This House or something like that. And I was interested in that, right? And so I think that's what kind of originally sparked my interest just in real estate in general. And I actually put several offers in on homes trying to buy a house back then.
Oh, wow.
That I never did. None of them ever got accepted. So I didn't buy anything then, but not until 2010, I think was which again a good time to buy then. But anyways, yeah. So it was really probably right when I was in high school or just after high school. So.
Oh, wow. What was your job, just out of curiosity, the one you had the salary for?
So that one was I worked for a company called Life, which was Living Independently Forever, and I worked with mentally challenged individuals and helped them in their homes and apartments and helped drive them around to meetings and appointments and go grocery shopping and things like that. So I actually worked, I think it was at like 5 p.m. at night, all night, and I could sleep there with the gentleman that I worked with was high enough level functioning to,
Hmm.
I could sleep. Um, until 9 in the morning. And so I would stay there overnight, wake up at 9 in the morning and go straight to high school.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
I had late start, so I didn't have to start first thing in the morning. But yeah, so it was kind of, and I think that was like 3 nights a week or something like that. But yeah,
Yeah. Well, then gave you a bit of a nest egg then if you were then trying to make offers on houses, but didn't have anything to do necessarily with real estate.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Although back then they were giving loans to anybody, so I don't think you needed money. you
Yeah, I
know.
just didn't I was wondering if maybe it was a job where you were doing something in the trades, working some type of construction
Nope.
type thing, and that's where you part of where your interest came from in terms of doing house flipping. But so what caught your attention about house flipping?
I think it was, it kind of had that sex appeal, right? That get in, make a bunch of money, and get out kind of thing. So, I don't know. It wasn't like I had a background. My parents didn't have a background in real estate, or my dad, he was a heavy equipment operator and then salesperson, and then he ran heavy equipment dealerships. Not until just after high school that he got into mortgages and started doing that as well. But yeah, we didn't have a real estate background or anything in my family.
Yeah. Did you grow up just working on stuff though around the house, doing stuff with your dad in that way? Like were you hands-on sort of practical with stuff or not so much?
More like on automobiles,
Oh
but
yeah.
not, yeah, not really on we're not carpenters, we weren't painters, none of that. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
cool. Okay, interesting. Um so obviously you've stuck with it, right? You got your real estate agent license, then went on to form your own brokerage. You've done real estate investing over the years. Before we move into talking about some specific investment strategies, just tell us a little bit about what you've come to like about real estate over this time and what keeps you interested in it.
My favorite thing about real estate is that every deal is different, right? Every home is different, every person I deal with is different, but then it's something that we can actually touch and feel
Hmm.
compared to like investing in the stock market. Real estate, I really like because you can touch and feel it, and you can go drive by it, and you can sell it, you can paint it red, you can paint it blue, right?
Yeah.
You do have those decisions on where you're going to spend your money or where you're not going to spend your money. So I like being a little more hands on in that aspect of it.
All right, let's move on and talk about some real estate investment strategies. And there are a ton of different approaches to investing in real estate out there. We're not going to try to cover all of those on this episode. We're going to focus on ones that we think might be of the most interest to a young adult. So someone who's just starting to get out of the house for the first time, or they've only been out for a couple of years. And so one of the things that comes to mind first for me is the idea of a house hack. So let's say we've got, a young adult, like I said, and they're in college and they're ready to sort of move out of the dorms, or maybe they're not going to college, they're just going straight into the working world, but they're ready to move out of the house. And most times when kids do that, they end up renting a place, and they'll usually find some buddies or friends to rent a place with to keep their costs down, but still typically then a big portion of their monthly income is going towards that rent payment. And then, of course, that decreases the amount that they have to set aside for savings and investing. So it slows down their journey to financial independence. So why don't you tell us about the house hack as an early kind of sort of starter way for someone who wants to start to have more money to set aside to walk that journey towards FI, and also might be thinks they might be interested in real estate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think house hacking is uh, part of the reason why I love real estate too, right? I mean, you can buy real estate with zero or no money down. There's so many different loan programs that you can do. A real estate book I read years ago, it always cracks me up because they talk about investing in real estate, and the author says, John and Kathy, they decided they want to be real estate investors, so they bought 10 rental houses every year for the next like 20 years, and now they own a million rental houses. And
Wow.
it's like, okay, great. Well, can everybody buy 10 or 20 rental houses every year?
Yeah.
Probably not, because you don't have that, extra income or that savings, right? So yeah,
No, and
house.
certainly not someone who's just moving out of the house, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And I think they were more established and stuff, but still,
right.
it's not practical, right? And house hacking is, I don't want to say everybody can do it, but almost anybody can do it, right? So
So tell us what exactly house hacking is. That's a kind of a vague term. So tell us what that is.
yeah, so in a nutshell, there's a lot of different ways of doing it, but it's essentially, scrapping together whatever you can to buy a house and get as many roommates in there as possible, whether it's a single family home, a duplex, or a fourplex, because you can get up to a fourplex with a normal, traditional owner occupied loan,
Okay.
and get as many people in there renting rooms and sleeping on the couch, whatever it is, to get that income to help pay that mortgage. So there's situations where there's guys that can do that, and where they're making money living in their own home, right? And if anything, they're at least getting their friends or people to pay most of that mortgage, right, and cover that. So a normal 18 to 25-year-old that just got out of high school, trade school, or college, they don't have the income to take on a $3,000 a month mortgage, which is
Yeah.
kind of what a starter home costs in today's world, right? So, but yeah, if they can buy that and they can get three roommates in there paying them 800 to $1,000 a month, now they can essentially live there, free. And you've got other people paying off your mortgage for you. So that's in a nutshell what house hacking is.
Yeah. So that's a great way to start, because they're also, while they're doing that, so they benefit in two ways, at least two ways, right? So to start with, they've dramatically decreased or eliminated altogether that huge monthly expense of a what would be a rent payment if they were just renting someplace. And at the same time, so they can take that money and set it aside to invest, whether they want to invest that in the stock market. If they find they're really interested in real estate, they can set that money aside to then use as a down payment for another property. And we'll talk more about that later, I'm sure. But also they're building equity in that home or that duplex or fourplex, whatever it is that they bought, while they're also saving money month to month, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're building equity. They're also paying off that mortgage. So you have principal pay down, right? You have appreciation. And then when you get into not owner occupied, you can get depreciation, which is tax benefits, on that. But if it's your primary residence, you're not going to be able to depreciate that. But yeah, and the best part about it is, depending on the loan that they got, they're doing it with little down or zero down, and we can talk about different, loan options and financing as well. So they essentially got a mortgage for, let's say, $400,000. And if the market goes up 4% next year, right, and their house is worth 400,000, um, that's $16,000 of equity that they're getting just by signing on the line, by taking the risk, right? And so if it's done correctly, they're paying off, they're paying that mortgage for you, your roommates are
Hmm.
paying down the mortgage, and then you're getting appreciation, right? Which is amazing. So
Well, and then they could potentially borrow against that appreciation, right? If they feel like the market is steady. I mean, you've got to be careful with how you're managing that debt. We'll talk about that, I think, at some point too. We should touch on that. Because on other episodes, we've talked a lot about keeping expenses down and budgeting. In the real estate side, you have to have debt to move forward, but you also need to be smart about it. So we should talk about that. But for now, they could potentially borrow against that. So let's say they've had that bump in equity that you talked about. Now the house is worth more. They could pull some of that out, pull out 8, 10, 12, even the full $16,000 potentially, use that to buy another property also, right?
yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
And then just sort of consistently keep marching forward from there. So, okay, so that might be a great way for someone who's just moving out of the house and has some interest in real estate as a way to make passive income and put their money into investing to pursue financial independence at a young age. They could potentially get some help from their parents to or other family members to buy a property if they, unlike most people, if they're not going to be as industrious as you and have a salary job when they're still in high school. So if they're not able to make that kind of money and they need some help, that's also a benefit for their family members, right? Because they're still part of that equity building and they might decide to form a partnership for a while and continue to buy some properties together is one
Yep.
possible option. I mean, this will be a little bit different for everybody, but there are lots of different ways that that each individual person or their family members could decide to pursue this.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the best rental property to own is the one where you live in, because you can keep an eye on it,
Oh
so
yeah, sure. Yeah, well,
so
especially if you're new and this is
absolutely.
in your
Yep.
and you're gaining experiences and managing all that. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, let's talk about some of the other strategies that someone who's young and early to the real estate investing world, what are some other type investment strategies they might pursue? You talked about house flipping. You want to talk about that one next?
Yeah, and we can talk about with the house hack as well, not just finding the house, but finding one that maybe needs work. So we talked about appreciation, but there's a thing called forced appreciation. And what that is maybe you bought a house that needed some painting and some landscaping and the kitchen remodeled and things like that. So you might buy it under market, put in $10,000 worth of work, and force appreciate $30,000, of new value there. So,
Yeah.
so that's another part of it, and that kind of brings you into flipping as well. So, flipping is the same thing, right? Buying something undervalued, putting some money into it, and selling it for more for a profit. It's a little bit harder to get financing for flips than it is like your primary residence. So for a young person looking to get into the real estate game, buying a primary residence is really the first step. But maybe after they have that and they do have some equity and they want to go get a HELOC on that, or refinance and take that cash out, now they have a bigger chunk of money to go do a flip. So when you're not living in the home, the bank is going to require quite a bit more down for your down payment for those loans.
Sure, sure. And a HELOC, just for anybody who doesn't know, that's a home equity line of credit. So that again, then you're back to that primary residence. That's that you built up some equity in there, like we talked about, whether that's because it appreciated over a year or two, or like you said, the forced appreciation. So they put 10,000 in, now it's worth 30 more. So they've got a 20 gain in there. So then they could, like I was saying, borrow against that 20, and that would be that HELOC, that home equity line of credit that then
Yep.
they could use potentially to help purchase other properties.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, okay. What other strategies are out there that might be good for somebody that's new to the world?
Yeah. I mean, there's There's wholesaling, which is another way to make money when you have limited amounts of funds, right? The hardest thing in real estate sometimes is finding the deal.
Mm,
Uh, we can find people that have money that want to invest, or long term buy and hold investors that are just looking for a decent deal on a rental property. So if you find the right deal, you can actually put the home or the property under contract and make that contract assignable, and then you can go out and find somebody that would want to buy that home for that price that you have agreed to in the contract, and then you charge a fee, an assignment fee on top of that. So let's say you found a home where, and it's all circumstantial, where homeowners and sellers, they get in situations where it's not necessarily about the price, it's more about the terms, either the fast close, or hey, we need to live here for a couple months after you buy the house. Maybe it's I bought a hoarder house once. There was stuff everywhere. And we just said, you can leave whatever you want. You can take whatever you want. You can leave whatever you want. We gave her $10,000 non-refundable earnest money the day she signed the contract. She cried. She's like, this is more money I've ever had in my life.
wow.
Um, and then we let her stay there for, I think, 3 months after we bought the place. And she was able to move out and buy a different place. So it was, we bought that place under market, and we said you could fix it up and put it on the market and make more money, but we gave her terms that were more favorable than the actual price.
Yeah.
And so if you could get that property under market, say for $200,000, and it needs $20,000 worth of work, and it'll be worth 300,000 when you're done. Again, these deals aren't just everywhere. You got to find them, but they are out there. You might find somebody that'll pay you 250,000 for that house, right? Or 225,000 for that house, because they can still make a decent profit on that. So you can make 5, 10, 20, $50,000 just doing an assignment and never actually buying anything.
So that's just that would be the wholesaling strategy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
So you're
Mhm.
kind of, you then would be functioning as almost not a middleman. I mean, I guess kind of, but sort of a finder. And then you're a connector. You're connecting, right? You're
Exactly.
finding the deal that,
Yep.
and you see the value in it. So you have to understand something about real estate and home values and stuff in your area. But then you're also making contacts and building connections and finding the right buyers out there and trying to match the two.
Correct.
And
Yep.
then
Correct.
you're not making the money that maybe those people are going to make when they ultimately sell it, or depending on how long they hold it or whatever, but you're making a chunk of cash now that then you can use to either look for, so you could really combine strategies, right? You could be working a path as a wholesaler and getting five, 10, $20,000 at a time, $50,000 at a time if you really found a great deal, just depending. And
Yep.
then you would set that money aside, continue doing wholesaling, and then you could take that money now that you're building up a chunk of cash and use that as your down payment to buy more investment properties. Because, like you were saying, you've got to have a higher dollar amount to put down for the bank to loan you the money for an investment property.
Right. Right. Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
can do both, right? You could be wholesaling this entire time. And the thing about, once you decide you want to invest in real estate, you have to understand, what is your criteria, what is your box, and when things fit in that box, then you buy them, right?
Yeah.
Or if you have the funds and all that. But you could wholesale, and you could cherry pick the ones that you want to actually keep, right? So you can sell the nine of them and keep the one, and guess what, those other nine, they're still decent deals. Maybe they didn't fit in your box, but you can still make some money on them. So
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. No, that's great. Interesting. What else is out there? You mentioned buy and hold. Let's talk about that maybe.
yeah, so buy and hold is where millionaires are made, right? So that is where the real money is. I read an article this morning of somebody that bought a what was it, a mobile home park for $1 million, put some money into it, ended up selling it for 3 million, made a ton of money. They were super happy. 6 years later, they look at it and it's listed for $8 million, and they're
Holy
they're
cow.
like, what? So it's one of those, like, and if I go back, same thing. I've had rentals and a lot of flip homes and things like that, and now we do some new construction as well. But if I go back, if I could have kept everything, I would have. Right.
Mm,
Sometimes you have to sell it to get those profits, to take that money to go, deploy it somewhere else. And I understand that, but long term buy and hold, it's the best real estate there is because you get somebody else paying off your mortgage, right? So you get principal pay down, you get monthly cash flow, you know,
From
um,
the rentals, right? So you're
from
so
the
buy and hold, you're
rentals.
buying it, you rent it out to somebody, and then you just hold on to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So sorry, go ahead.
And
So you're getting
yeah,
some
no, totally
passive
fine.
income each month from the rental.
Yep. Yep. Passive income each month. They're paying off your mortgage,
Hmm.
right? You get appreciation, and then you get depreciation, right? And depreciation is there's several different ways. We could do a whole podcast on depreciation, but the short story is, the home is worth $400,000. The land is worth 100, so the structure is worth 300,000, and then they depreciate that over 27 and a half years, right? Now you can do other cost segregation studies and things like that to get some more depreciation up front and whatnot. But let's, for easy math, if it was $300,000 and it was depreciated over 30 years, right? That would be $10,000 per year that you would get to write off from your income taxes.
Okay.
So so that would be income that you do not have to pay taxes on now.
Yeah. So
Uh,
you lower your tax burden each year
exactly.
from that
Yep.
depreciation. Okay.
Yep. Yep. And usually it's if you're cash flowing on that property, you're basically going to get all of that cash flow tax free.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a big advantage.
And so these guys make a lot of money. They just don't pay taxes. And the reason is because the tax code is written because they want people to own real estate.
Yeah, yeah, sure. No, that makes sense. Yeah, well, right. And then that's if you start to get into that world, right, then those are things that you can take advantage of. It's not just for the ultra rich, it's anybody who's doing real estate has out once
Absolutely.
you're beyond your primary residence where you can start to take advantage of those things because it's part of the tax code.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
It's not illegal. It's not, I mean,
Yeah.
it's totally legal and people do it all the time. And guys
Well,
like,
sure, it's an incentive to, like you said, to buy real estate. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. Okay, great.
And to never
Um,
sell it, because if you sell it, now you have to pay your capital gains tax, right?
oh,
So
sure.
so
Right,
they
right.
want they want to keep that money in real estate, and you do too. We all do. So
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about a few other strategies. What other things are out there for somebody who's again new to the real estate world?
the biggest thing for me, the best advice I could give anybody is you have to learn, right? And so
Yeah.
you learn by listening to podcasts, by reading books, by getting out there, meeting real estate agents, sellers, buyers, and just really becoming an expert in that market, right? In whatever market you're in, because you hear all the time that this deal came up and I just wasn't sure, and but once you have your box and you know what a good deal is, and when you have gotten to the point where you're an expert in real estate, and you don't have to be an expert by owning 100 rental properties, right? It's really just educating yourself and becoming familiar with the area, the market, different loan types, things like that. Is when you find the deal, you want to be able to strike, right? You want to be able to buy it. You want to be able to get it under contract, get your home inspected, make sure it's still a good deal. But so many of these guys just are not prepared enough. And then they come across this deal and they're not able to perform, right? So my advice would be become an expert, but also get your finances to a place where you can buy something, right? And that doesn't mean you got to have hundreds of thousands of dollars or anything like that. It means get your credit score up, pay your bills on time, right? Do all these little things to make it to where when you go to a bank, they're going to feel comfortable giving you money. I work with builders and developers and multimillionaires all the time, and some of them are their books are really good, and some of them aren't. And
Hmm.
you can tell which one is which because the bank is willing to get that money, right? And if
Oh,
you
sure.
don't need the money, you just need to borrow the money, right? So
Right. Right, sure. You need to borrow the money to buy that property, so then you
exactly,
can continue to make more money, but you're not buying every property, well, really rarely any properties outright with cash, right? You're
exactly,
you're
yep,
using the bank's money to make the big purchase, putting
100%,
some
yep,
of your money down. But again, and we're not going to get into this, I don't think today, but there is you do have, and this is where it comes to being an expert, and that I think covers a lot of different things. So part of what you're saying, as I understand it, is you have to understand what type of strategies are out there, what makes sense for you, and what you might be interested in. You have to understand your market so you can recognize what's a good deal or not.
Hmm.
But you also, at some point, right? So one of the differences between real estate and the stock market is one is very active. All the things that you're describing or take a lot of you involve with a lot of different people, so you've got to like interacting with people, and you've got to spend time. So you have to have an interest in actually doing that. Now, there's no one right path investing for everybody. Some people are like, you know what, I don't want to do that. Like that's cool. There are passive things you can do, like the stock market. That's a separate conversation, but that's much more passive. But there are some people, like you had this interest, and I there's some other people that I know that they like looking at properties. They like looking
Hmm.
at stuff online. They like going around looking at stuff, and they like it. And so real estate is a vehicle that makes sense to them because they like that it's active and putting that time in. So then when you understand your market, then you can, and what you're trying to, what strategy or combination of strategies you're trying to use, then when you see a good deal, you recognize it and you can decide quickly rather than, well, I'm not sure, and then it's gone, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
And but then ultimately, right, it is a business also if you're real estate investing. And so you do have to think about and be aware of, yes, you have passive income coming in, which is great, and you can use that to continue to build wealth and get to FI at a younger age, but you still have to manage your expenses, right? So your example of your advice of manage your money, know where your money's going, have a good credit score, which means you pay your bills on time, you don't have a bunch of frivolous unsecured credit card debt. If you do, pay it down, and that would fit in with our budgeting conversation, right, that we had on a different episode. So you
I
still have
agree.
to do those things, but then instead of just avoiding debt because you're trying to get control of your expenses, now that you understand those things, then you can start using debt as a tool to help you build wealth on the real estate side if that's a path that excites you and lights you up.
Yep, exactly. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Now real estate can be passive, right? So we can do all of this very passively, right? You can hire a real estate agent, say, I want to go buy a rental property, whatever.
Hmm.
But you're not going to find the deals that, you're going to talk about for 10 years at Thanksgiving, right? It's
Yeah.
you're just going to buy the house and it's going to rent it out and you're going to make an average return and things like that. But if you have limited amounts of money, you really need the really good deals, right? You need the deals to really make sense. We could all go buy a rental property today. Does it make sense? Maybe not. Maybe it does, right? But usually, if you're just buying something off MLS, it'll be okay, and you can get passive income from that, but it's not going to cash flow as much. You might pay a little more, all of those things, right? So it can be passive. It's just not going to be as great.
Well, and that brings up a good point because as I think this is true for all of us at different points. As you go through life and your circumstances are different, when you're younger, typically people have less money, but more time and more energy.
Exactly.
Right? When you're older, if you've been working a good career for a while and you've been responsible with your money, you have more money, but maybe less time you want to spend or less energy. And that's a case where, look, I want to do some real estate stuff if I'm older, but I don't want to put in all the time and effort. I'll make a little bit less, but I'm going to have somebody else do it. And that might make sense if you're, you know,
Yeah.
45 or 50 or 60 or whatever age.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. A
But
college kid does not need passive income.
yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, but it's great if they can get it, right, a college kid, but then well, I guess it's passive in the sense that they're not they're not trading their time to earn that income from real estate, but they're spending their time to identify the right deals
Yes.
and
Yeah.
make the right
Exactly.
connections. Yeah. So I
Exactly.
guess it's not passive in that sense. So yeah, you're right.
But, but we're all working actively to get to where passive in our later years, just like
Yeah,
what you were saying.
right. Yeah, right.
Hopefully
Exactly.
not so late, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good point. Can we talk real quick about BRRRR? Because I that comes up from time to time. It can be a little bit confusing because it's just some letters. So
Right.
that's buy, rehab. So that's fix it up, right?
Yep.
Refinance, and then repeat. Is there sometimes there's another R in there. I don't remember what that one's
Yep.
for, but
Yep. Well, yeah. So it's buy, rehab, rent,
oh, rent.
refinance, and repeat. Yep.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I missed an R in the middle. Okay. Yeah.
It's an important one because they're going to help pay off your mortgage, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
But no, it's again, you hear about all of these deals, right? And if you find the right property, you are able to buy it and rehab it. That's that forced depreciation, right? And then rent it. And then the bank is going, if you have a 12-month lease on that, the bank is not going to, they're not going to count that mortgage negatively on your debt to income ratio. So
Okay.
I could make $5 an hour and I could own 100 rental properties as long as I have leases signed, because the bank is not going to count those mortgages against my income, right? So
Gotcha.
so that's why the rent is important, right? So you buy it, you fix it up, you make it more valuable, you rent it out,
So
and then
hold
now
just to clarify real quick, Bill. So the reason that doesn't count, right? So with the debt to income ratio, just to clarify, is because when you have a property, right, your mortgage counts as an expense as terms of as far as the bank goes. But if you have that 12-month lease, what you're saying is, oh, they see income coming in, so now you have income that offsets that mortgage expense, and that's why it doesn't count against you for continuing to borrow more. Is that right?
correct. Yep,
Okay.
correct.
All right.
Even if they haven't moved in yet, but you have that 12-month lease signed, they're going to take that lease and they'll negate that mortgage for you.
Yeah,
Uh,
cool.
Not until I think 12 months of rental history will they actually count that as income. Like, let's say you're cash flowing 500 a month extra
I
above and
gotcha.
beyond your
Okay.
mortgage. So they won't necessarily count it as income, but they're not going to count the mortgage against you on your ratio,
Okay.
um, until you have that history of it. Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
Yep. So yeah, so you buy it, you forced the appreciation by fixing it up, you rent it out, and then now you bought it here, and so your loan amount is here or lower, right? Because you put a little down payment, and you can do this as a primary residence, right? So you wouldn't have the rent part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can buy it with zero or no money down, and we could do a whole podcast on different loan programs for that, but
Mm.
fix it up and you move into it, and then you can refinance it and take that cash, that equity now that you're talking about, either in a HELOC or just do a 30-year new loan, right? And you take that cash out,
Mm-hmm.
and then they say repeat, because you got your money back, right? So you got your down payment and maybe more back, right?
Yeah,
So
and then you just keep doing those, and that's how you kind of sort of build wealth. So, you're going to start slowly at first, but the more that you do, right, if you start with one, you're going to get X amount. If you do another one, then maybe the next time you can do two, you do a couple of those, now you can do three or four, and all of a sudden now you're really sort of off and running and starting to build up a real head of steam.
excuse me. Yes, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, you do have to find the right deal, right? Because again, you just go buy a home that's for sale down the street. That one, you got to get a good price on it, right, in order to make that work. But yep, and one that maybe needs a little bit of work as well.
Yeah, 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 sure. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
Anything else that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I would just say again, research, find a mentor. We didn't talk about that.
Oh,
Find somebody that is in a place where you want to be, right? That has more experience, that's willing to kind of show you the ropes and learn. I found, most real estate investors, they want to give back, right? They want to help others, and there's enough out there for everybody. So there's no big secrets or anything like that. So yeah, find somebody that's in a spot where you want to be 5, 10 years from now, next year, whatever, and learn. Just continue to learn. Always, I even tell my real estate agents this that work for us at the brokerage: you got to think like an investor, right? Because you got to have your investor hat on, because there might be that amazing deal, but you weren't thinking about it, and so you weren't in investor mode. So you always kind of have to be in investor mode in order to take advantage of the deals when they come.
yeah. Okay. No, I like that. Any tips on how someone might go about finding a mentor? Would they start maybe with their real estate agent? And did you know any real estate investors that I could talk to see if they would be interested in teaching me some things, or just to have a conversation, or what would you
Yeah,
suggest?
100%. I think use your sphere, your circle of influence, people around you that you already know, your friends, family, neighbors, colleagues. It'll probably surprise you. There's probably a lot more real estate investors out there than you think, right? But yeah, there's websites and blogs and all kinds of chat rooms and different bigger pockets. I'm a big fan of bigger pockets.
Yep.
There's they've got a lot of good books and podcasts as well and different things. So just meeting people, preferably in your market because each market is a little bit different, right? But if not, then meet somebody from afar. And I mean, there's always things to learn. So, and sometimes it's, you learn things not to do as much as it is things to do. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just as a quick tip for our listeners, there was another episode with Greg Merritt where we actually talked about this was more college focused, but it applies here too, because you're talking about a mentor. And his whole point is, when kids are going to college, for example, you don't know what you don't know. So there are so many different career paths and all sorts of options out there that when you're young like that, you just don't even know. And you can learn a lot and discover a lot of potential options just by spending the time to get to know people and just ask them if you can sit down and chat with them for a little bit. You're not asking them for anything other than some of their time to talk about, hey, what's it like being an architect? What's it like being in real estate or being a real estate investor? And what Greg was saying is most people are happy to talk about what they've done, right? And so, and what's what you're saying with, most real estate investors want to give back. They, not everyone, of course, but most people, more than you probably would think, would be happy to sit down and talk with someone who's younger, who's interested in learning.
absolutely. And you'd be surprised they would probably partner with you as well, right? If you found a deal and brought it to them, they already have the banks and the financing and the good credit scores and all of those. So yeah, more than learning, I mean, you might find your first partner as well.
Wow, that's exciting. Yeah, cool. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, thanks so much, Bill, for coming on. I think this has been really useful. I hope people get a lot out of it. Anyone out there who's listening that's interested in real estate. If anybody has specific questions, how can they reach you? What's a good way to get in touch with you?
You can call or text me on my cell number, 208-353-4169. You can find me on Instagram at your realtor build, email address, marketprobill@gmail.com. Yeah, I'm looking for land. I'm looking for flips. I'm looking for, all of those as well. So bring me any good deals. If I don't buy them, I know somebody that will. So,
Yeah.
and we buy stuff from wholesalers. I've got a development project right now we're working on that we got from a wholesaler. It was an assignment contract. They made $50,000. We paid them 50,000, but the deal made sense, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So bring them on. We'll look at anything, right? Because I've always got my investor hat on.
Yeah, yeah, great. No, awesome. Thank you so much, Bill. And I will put all that information about how people can get in touch with you in the show notes, so they don't have to try and
Cool.
scramble it down or
Yeah.
keep going, hit and
Awesome.
repeat or rewind. So I'll put that in the show notes for everyone. So thank you again, Bill.
Cool. Thanks, Dominic. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the FI for Kids podcast. Please tell a few others about the show, leave us a 5-star review, and if you haven't already, please subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, or wherever you get your pods. Our intro and exit music this episode are courtesy of Douglas Cameron. You can find Doug's music at douglascameron.net or Spotify. Thanks again, and we'll talk next week.